In this beginner-friendly watercolor tutorial, I'm sharing my process for 3-step better watercolored leaves, and I'm reminding you what not to do. Hey friends, welcome back. My name is Shayda Campbell, and today I have another watercolor video for you. Sometimes the best way to learn is to see what not to do and then what you should do. So that's what we're working out today. I am using hot pressed paper from Arches, but use any watercolor paper that you have on hand. I have my Munoz set. Again, just use the watercolor paints that you're comfortable with. And I have a number 6 round brush. And I've been painting a lot of autumn items lately, so I have these beautiful greens and reds and yellows on my palette, and I'm going to pick up a dark green, and we'll start by showing you exactly what not to do. So when you're painting a leaf, you do not want to sort of draw it or outline it first and then color it in. That's a recipe for getting a harsh line around the edge of your subject, and you see how I'm going over it and over it. I am not allowing the watercolor paints to do their magic. I'm overworking them, and I'm going to get a really flat, dead-looking color there. Let's pick up a nice caramel or raw sienna, and we'll paint a maple leaf together. Again, I start with that outline, and with this lighter color, you're really going to see as I begin to color it in, I am going to get that really harsh line around the edge, and I'm overworking the paints. I'm going over and over my subject. That means I lose all that beautiful difference and variation in the transparency of the paint. So I've lost that watercolor magic. We'll talk about that more in a moment. For now, let's try to add some detail to our leaf. For one, what we've done here that we're not to do is we've started really dark. So when I add the second layer, you barely even see the veining that I'm adding on both of these leaves. Also, I haven't waited for the leaves to dry, so I'm kind of getting some wet into wet going on where the paint is bleeding, and that's not what you want when you begin to add detail like tiny lines. To complete our what not to do section, I'm going to paint one more leaf, again, starting really dark, starting by outlining or drawing my subject and filling it in a very sort of basic coloring way, overworking my paints and just giving me this really plain look. Okay, let's move on. And just to be clear, these leaves do not look horrible. They just could be better, and that's what I want to talk about next. I'm going to share my 3-step formula for better leaves. So, to begin, we're going to pick up a really light yellow. This is Naples yellow mixed with lots of water. And here's how I like to start a maple leaf. Instead of outlining it, just give yourself a little X or a couple of lines to help guide your brush. Then we do these large sweeping motions of the brush, 1 or 2 brush strokes to paint each section of the leaf. And then once those big swaths of color are down on the paper, we can use the tip of the brush to refine the shape ever so slightly while the paint is still wet. And in that way, we get really beautiful variations in the opacity and the transparency and the color, and we don't get any harsh lines. Let's try this again. I'm going to begin with a really light green, and I'm just painting sort of half of a leaf. Then to make this even lighter, what we can do is come back with just clean water and kind of do one more brush stroke, filling out the shape of the leaf, making it even lighter. Go ahead and release a little bit of darker color into the wet area, and suddenly you've got this beautiful natural shaped leaf with wonderful variations in opacity. That watercolor magic that we talked about is there. Let's do the red leaf together. So for this one, I begin by painting the stem just with the very tip of my brush. And then for each leaf, we're going to use the belly, the larger part of the brush, and we add a little pressure and we run that belly across the page once or twice, so either 1 or 2 brush strokes. And then we use the tip of the brush to refine the shape of those leaves. And those fluid movements of the brush give us the most natural, organic leaf shapes. And that is step 1 complete. Remember, I said this is a 3-step process, so you're gonna let that dry completely. And step 2 is all about layering. So we're picking up a slightly darker yellow. You can mix a little brown in or just mix in more pigment, less water. And we're going to come over here and begin the layering process by just putting some messy splotches. So put a little pressure on that brush and just add a bit of darker yellow wherever you think it looks good. Just a few hits of the brush. Keep it random. Let's add some to the red leaves. I've got a slightly darker red here. I mixed a little brown and a little purple into my red, and I'm just putting a few hits of the brush right on those red leaves. There we go, don't overthink it. And then if I'm honest, I don't think the green leaf really needs step 2. It has a beautiful variation. We released some dark pigment, we did some wet into wet. So let's move right on to step 3. We're going to pick up a little of that dark caramel color. And step 3, you do want to wait for the first 2 layers to have dried completely. So we've got dry watercolors here. We're working a wet on dry technique, which is just what it sounds like, painting wet on top of dry paint. And we are doing the detail work. So because we are using a wet on dry technique, we can be beautifully, wonderfully precise. And we're just going to use the very tip of that round brush. That's the beauty of the round brush. It has a really fine point. And we are doing this beautiful, very loose, very whimsical detail work, just adding some veining. It's very perfectly imperfect. They all look a little different. You just want to use nice, fluid, confident motions. So this takes some practice. But working with wet on dry does give you a wonderful amount of precision. You can do those super fine lines, and working in layers, you can build into something wonderfully detailed. And I think you can feel confident. You don't have to make these old mistakes anymore. You can sort of graduate to the next level, which really isn't that much more difficult once you understand the process. And friends, I want to mention that my autumn watercolor video is coming out next week. You might recognize that leaf right in the middle. If you want to paint along with me and paint acorns and mushrooms and pumpkins, oh my, then definitely subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss all the wonderful autumn goodies that I have coming up for you this month. September is the start of my favorite season, and I can't wait to spend it painting with you. There's a new tutorial every Tuesday and Friday. If you're not seeing them, it's because you need to be subscribed with your notifications on. Thanks for your support, friends. I'll see you soon with a new video.